Hello, Dr. Mo. It is so good to see you.
It's such a pleasure to be here, Madara. Thank you for the invitation.
You're welcome. It's so good to see you after a bit. And hello to everybody who's joining us as well. Good evening, afternoon, morning, or whatever time it is where you might be joining us from. And welcome to another one of our conversations, which I hold near and dear, titled Rethinking Personal Branding. So they're basically a set of conversations that we've been having for the past 3-4 weeks now. And I started them because as a build up to one of my courses, that I'm launching, or that I have launched rather, about helping people to build, authentically and build for impact and things like that. But most importantly, also to create this shift from, being who you're not, or being fake, or being under so much pressure because you want to project the work that you do, and then forgetting all your values and say, oh my God, now it's raining for people to dance on TikTok, and you just start dancing when you have no business doing any of that. And no issues with the people who do, but that's just not the way for everybody, right? So I just wanted people to see how they can, create their develop their own personal brands in a way that's meaningful, relevant to them, that doesn't go against like their family values, protects the privacy of the ones that they love, and it's actually good work that's beneficial to them and to others as well. So this is one of those conversations, and I am so happy to be speaking to Dr. Mo. We have shared Dr. Mo's profile so that we can spend enough time really getting into this conversation, and it's just a blessing, and I'm so excited to have you here today. So excited. So thank you so much for making out the time from your pretty busy schedule and agreeing to have this conversation with me, Dr. Mo. Thank you.
An absolute joy. You have a very special place in my heart, Omadara. So this is just a joy for me to be able to do.
Thank you. Thank you. Same here. Same here. The feeling is mutual. Okay. So I wanted to start off really with, I really love hearing about your journey. And I feel that not a lot of people know that journey. It's a very interesting one, and it's beautiful to see where the journey has led you. So I wanted us to really start from there. That can you give us like a peek into your background? How did it all start? Where did it all start for you?
Right, great. Thank you. Thank you so much for the question. When I was growing up, I had so much envy for people who, when asked the question, what do you want to be when you grow up? They had a ready answer. They knew exactly what they wanted to be, and they knew what they wanted to do. For some of us, the journey of life was always going to be a journey. It was always going to be about some meandering, falling flat on our faces, learning from the experience, picking ourselves up, moving, and clarifying the true north via the journey to our destination. And so I think, as with everybody else, the journey started, in childhood, particularly with parents that were committed to social service. My mother was a nurse. My dad was quite unconventional. He was a career cook. He was a professional cook and a caterer. So a bit of an unconventional household, but they were committed, to service. We always had elderly people around us who were not even necessarily just our grandparents. My parents found the quote unquote adoption of older people to be quite a hobby. They loved taking care of older people. We would spend almost all our Sunday afternoons, in the home of an elderly widow or another, whom my parents just thought needed the company, maybe needed some additional support. Christmases were spent in the hospital. We thought nothing of it. Isn't that how everybody spends Christmas in the hospital? Visiting sick children. And then my parents belonged to a service organization. My father was a Rotarian, member of the Rotary Club, and rose to leadership there. And my mother was a member of the Inner Wheel Club, and both of them were service organizations. You paid to serve in those two clubs. And so I think that sort of framed my perception of life, and that of my siblings as well. Our perception of life, a meaningful life is a life that is spent in pursuit of service of others, and in
Absolutely.
pursuit of the service of God. That for us was what we understood, by our parents' example to be the definition of a good life.
Mm.
And so
Mm.
when the time came for me to decide, a course of study, I remember having a conversation with my mom, who ran a school at the time. I didn't know that she was preparing, her own legacy. Those conversations. And I said, I feel like I feel like I really want to do something artistic. I quite like the arts. I quite like drawing, painting, and things like that. And I had gone to my dad to ask him what he thought I should, study in the university. And he said, "Oh, I think you should study fine art." And remember, this was, the 1990s. People didn't study fine arts in the
No.
1990s in that sense. I mean, your future was not assured if you studied fine arts. I really began to question whether this man was my dad at all.
Mm.
I decided to go to my mom because I knew she was my mom. I said, "What do you think?" And she said, "Oh, yeah, art is good, but have you thought about education?" You
Mm.
know, um, and that conversation led to other conversations, with my auntie, who's also an educationist, with a neighbor who was also an educationist, and just educationists began to pop out of the woodwork,
Mm.
and really offer me a lot of guidance along that path and show me the transferability of the course of study that I was now beginning to gravitate towards, which was educational administration. And so I studied education administration for a first degree. Um, and then I went for my teaching practice in year 3. And teaching practice, I must say, really broke my heart. It was my first opportunity to be in a public school, teaching in a public school. I had over 50 children, in that school, young children. Some of them didn't even have shoes, on. It wasn't a very pleasant sight. And every day I went there and I wanted to do more for these children. And I knew that if I gave all which I wanted to give, I would have nothing left. I would be completely and emotionally depleted. And I wasn't necessarily receiving the kind of community support, psychosocial support, mentorship, and coaching that you would expect to receive when, as a student teacher, you are being sent to school. So we weren't receiving that. And I think at that point is when I made the decision that I'm going to fix this problem, at least contribute to fixing this problem. But I can't do it from here. I want to fix this problem for 55,000 children. I want to fix it for 5,500,000 children, 500,000 children. I want to make sure that I do everything in my power to ensure that children don't have to learn this way and that teaching doesn't have to be the kind of tedium, that I had experienced. Um, I think I was scarred. I was quite young. I was a bit scarred by the experience. I loved it. I enjoyed it, but it was so emotionally draining that
Mm.
I bolted out the door as I graduated, and I went to work in banking.
Mm.
So I worked in banking for a little while. Then the opportunity arose, for me to work in management consulting. And I took it because I knew that management consulting would stretch me, and my build new capabilities and skills in me that I didn't have prior. And so I worked in management consulting, and then I went to volunteer for junior achievement, and I fell in love. I
Mm.
fell in love with work. It was, the world's biggest or largest business education NGO, teaching business education, entrepreneurship, to children as young as 5. I absolutely fell in love, and that there began my journey back, into education.
Mm.
I eventually would work, as a member of the team at Junior Achievement as a vice president of programs.
Mm.
And there, I went on to study for a master's in the UK. I was more clear on what it was that I
Mm.
wanted to do, and I knew that I wanted to bring people together. I wanted to, the way I was, helping to bring volunteers into schools and taking government, to the private sector in junior achievements. I knew I wanted to do that. I just didn't know how. So I went to learn how. I went back to school, and I studied for a master's that enabled me to write a dissertation on public-private partnerships. And I returned to Nigeria and I continued to work using my skills, using my capabilities, but this time working very heavily in the youth sector. Because by this time, I'd started to volunteer for the Commonwealth at international level. And I remember that I had the opportunity. I actually got an email, from one of my course leaders, my supervisor, saying there's an opportunity to apply, for funding, and you should apply because you got a distinction, in your master's dissertation, and you should at least try and get a scholarship to do a
Yeah.
PhD. I wasn't very confident, in myself at the time, but I applied anyway, and I did get, funding, and there journey. There started the journey of my PhD again in the
Mm,
UK, and this time really gave me a solid 5 years to research public-private partnerships, to understand the effectiveness of public and private schools. And then when I was done, I returned to Nigeria. I was married by then. We had both come from the international context. I was in England, he was an American. We both returned to Nigeria and we wanted to serve. And I realized that what I wanted to do was to build a platform to grow people. I
mm,
wanted people to have the sort of skills that I had developed, but I wanted them to have better skills. I wanted them to be even better than I was, so
mm.
that we could all solve problems together from a place of skills, real skills and understanding of the issue. And there began the journey of TEP Center, the Education Partnership Center.
Mm.
Um, and I think that in itself has been a learning exercise. I've learned so much, from my colleagues, from working in the education space at national level, at global level, at regional level, and just being able to reflect on how we've been able as an organization to
Yeah.
achieve a lot of what we set out to achieve, and how we're sort of outlining new and bigger goals, for ourselves. It's very
Mm.
exciting. It's been extremely tasking. I have about 15 gray hairs, that as a result of my work
Yeah.
there. But I think I'm very proud of all achieved and accomplished. Yeah.
And we're very proud of the work that you're doing too. It's been an inspiration to so many of us. So thank you for that. I have to ask Dr. Mo that as you were going on this path, even though I feel like your the insight you've given us into your background kind of explains this. But regardless, I know that with the kind of qualifications you had when you were starting out, you still have actually, with the kind of qualifications you have, with the kind of opportunities that you have and everything, this could have gone in a completely different direction. And even though, you had amazing parents, amazing, amazing, your mom, amazing. I remember her very well growing up. And, she was amazing. She used to save all of us from our parents when we misbehave. She's the one who come and deliver us and tell our parents how they should treat us, positive parenting instead of beating us, stuff like that. So amazing, amazing. Some of my siblings have very interesting, stories to say about that. But even though you had this support, how did you why did you still, how are you convinced that this was the right path? How did you deal with all the pressure? How did you not succumb to doing something that could have easily been more glamorous? I mean, looking at where you even worked, before you went for your PhD. This could have been a very different journey. So what kept you going? Especially, a lot of people when they want to do any work in especially when it's development type work in Nigeria or Africa, it's incredibly tough. It's very tough. And you started at such a young age. How did you deal with that kind of pressure that you must have faced? And why were you convinced that this was the path for you?
So I think this is a very important question, Amodara, and I think reflecting again, this is why I'm grateful for the opportunity to have meandered so much. Um, Even I am sometimes horrified by the reality that I have experience from at least 10 different sectors. I, I've even worked in HR, for goodness sake. I've done. I used to make
Love it, love it,
I've
love
done
it, love it, love it. Love to hear it.
things, and I hold my dad responsible because every time I would go to him and say, "What do you think about this new thing I want to do?" He'd be like, "If you think it'll make you happy, and if you think it'll help you on your life's journey, go
Hmm.
ahead. The world is your oyster." I believed it,
Love it,
and
love it.
it helped. It might not help everyone, but it helped me. And so what I didn't realize I was doing was I was bringing at least 15 years of unconventional work experience. into the decision to, establish and work with TEP Center. I had gone around, I had gleaned skills, developed skills, gleaned knowledge, gained capacity, and all that was required was, I think, two things. One was to write the vision down. It was important for me to write it, what I wanted to do and what I felt, where I felt my life was going. So I did that. I wrote that down at least 5 years before I started, the work at TEP. In fact, I started to journal in the year 2021. Sorry, in the year 2001. So I still have journals from 2001. So I'm one of those people that can map her journey. I can actually map my journey because I did start to journal very early. I have 20-year-old, 22-year-old journals. And again, it's not for everyone, but for a person like me who needs to feel centered, it's very important and mission aligned. What I'm doing has a purpose that is bigger than myself. It's very important. And so one was to write it down so that I could clarify it in my head. And the second was simply to make a decision. It's like marriage. You decide, I'm going to be with this person. And that's just that, really. We'll work it out from that point, but we're going to be together. We're going to fix it. We're going to make it work. But it was really that decision that, look, I've committed. I'm committing to doing this. And once you make that decision, after having written down where you're going, I think it becomes easier because a wise person once said, focus creates blindness. When you're very focused on where you're going, you become, in a manner of speaking, blind to a lot of distractions, opportunities, things that would take you off the course. Might look good in the short term, but will take you off the course. And I have quite a few examples of those. So it was really about focus, determination, making that decision after having written it down. And then surrounding myself with people who would tell me the truth. My academic training is to be able to receive truth because academia very often is simply in pursuit of truth. If you're studying for a PhD, that's the chief thing that you're trying to do. You're trying to arrive as close as possible to the truth around a circumstance or a phenomenon. And so I've surrounded myself with people that will tell me the truth, whether I want to hear it or not. And they keep me grounded in the work that I do and also in the way that I live my life as well. So I think for me, that's how I've just stayed the course.
Love it. Love it. I love that. Thank you for sharing that. And I really like the bit about journaling because I mean, I'm a journaler as well. And I find it very helpful because, I agree with you. Like sometimes I even look at my journey and, I just go back. Like recently, I remember trying to do this course. I was feeling, they're low moments, right? So they were one of those moments I was feeling a little low and feeling like, oh, things are not working out. And then I went to look at my old journals and I'm like, no, that's the behavior of an ingrate. Things are definitely working out. This is exactly like I couldn't believe like it was exactly how I had prayed for it to happen and I had mapped it out. But because I was so caught up in the moment, I didn't even realize that. And I also like what you said, Dr. Moore, about, just about the role of your parents. I like how you really emphasize that because to be honest, I also consider them to be so helpful on our journeys and to really kind of understand us. So I remember when I was going to get into university, I just wanted to be a lawyer. That's where it started out. I was like, oh, all those things where people say, oh, if you can talk, you just be a lawyer. Nobody thinks that you can become a journalist or something. It's you have to be a lawyer. And then I had all these issues with school. I couldn't get into law and, I had to do creative arts and I was so upset. But creative arts like really shaped me into who I am today. Like I remember my dad was saying that I just go for the experience, And when he was done, he kept saying, Dara, you're going to end up as a teacher. And it's going to also be like some consulting type thing. He was saying this like years ago. And he was like, just go on that journey, learn the different stuff, have fun, and stuff like that. And everything turned out just the way he thought of it. So even though I do understand that I realize that some people do have funny parents, but I think that we shouldn't dismiss the role of our parents in our lives and how they can help us on our path, where we're going and stuff like that. Of course, sometimes it might be a little traditional in their thinking, but I think that the wisdom is still there, and that, these things are helpful.
Omadara, it's interesting you say that, because remember I was talking about how my dad had suggested that I do fine art. And I had
Yes.
wondered, what sort of advice this was. In the journey of life, I found that my creative side always shows up. It always finds expression. And someone said it to me, someone explained it to me, a life coach explained it to me a few years ago. She said, when you are consulting, you are you are able to solve problems because you have a creative mindset. And it's probably the same with Dara. Creativity will find an outlet one way or another. Either you'll pick up a pen and you'll start to draw. Let me show you something. So sometimes I'm doodling stuff, right? I don't know if
Oh, nice.
doing stuff. I have
Yeah.
quite a bunch of them here. I'm developing an education plan or reviewing an education policy. My hand is, I find myself just gravitating towards my paintbrushes, right?
That's-
And
yeah.
my paints are never far away, from me. So you are
Love
correct,
it.
Madawa. Our parents were onto something. They could see something that we couldn't necessarily, we might not have been able to see because we were so young and inexperienced. So it's a blessing to have parents, who are truly committed, to helping us
Absolutely.
achieve everything that we are uniquely designed to achieve. But even if you don't have those kinds of parents, you still have a community around you of people who can see you better than
Yes,
perhaps you can see yourself. And it's our
absolutely.
responsibility to curate that community, to build that tribe of people around us.
Love that. Love that. Love that. Thank you for sharing that, Dr. Mo. That was so great. And now just looking at your journey, there's something else I want to really shine light on here. And it's, sometimes I feel that some people don't have the opportunity. Let's just say they're in difficult situations and they don't have the opportunity to try too much. I personally do feel like everybody does, but then I understand that, sometimes people are so pressed for finances, or, they need to do this or the other, and they don't have the room to really kind of express themselves the way they would want to, or they just feel like they're risk averse because of all the will I say roadblocks on their journey. Now, in sharing your story, you've mentioned something very powerful that I really want us to go deeper on. And it's volunteering. Because I think that, sometimes, unfortunately, I have seen a situation that's of course not unique to our country, but I've seen a situation where, volunteering has just become you find like the bulk of people, they're just doing it because of one outcome they're trying to so you see what I mean? So you go there and you find everybody there just with like a hidden mission. It's okay. I mean, whatever rocks your boat. But I think that there's so much beauty in it, in terms of it, one being a creative outlet, one, being it can form the basis of, where you're really going in life. And it can even help you to be a version of you that you're too scared of or you don't have the room to explore in your daily life or your day-to-day life. So I wanted to ask how early you think people should get, into volunteering, what the role you think it plays in people's lives, and how it can even help us to like turn around even education in Nigeria and Africa, and even all over the world.
I think that's another great question, Amadara. It's interesting that just on Sunday I was talking to the kids, that I volunteered to teach at Sunday school, and we were mulling over a statement. Your thoughts become your actions become your habits become your character. But what we were
Hmm.
really getting at was character, right?
Hmm.
Um, a lot of people get to the end of their lives and they have regrets. And a lot of those regrets are around how they have lived their lives. Um, the alignment to or dissonance with integrity.
Hmm.
And quite a few people tend to have regrets, because they have not lived their lives in a way that demonstrates as much integrity, and as much character as they would love to. And I think that it's important to begin to imbibe these skills as early as we can. Volunteering is most ideally an expression of character.
Hmm.
Because the very essence of volunteering is saying, I'm going to do something but not get anything back, right? In return, or what I'm going to get back in return is so
Hmm.
little in comparison with what I'm doing. Of course, I hear you. A lot of people volunteer as a strategic move. I'm trying to get into business school, for example. So I volunteered to teach kids in an underserved community. I mean, look, whatever rocks your boat. But as you say, I love the way you put it. But there is something deeper. There's a spirit of volunteering that is a giving spirit. And even if you find yourself always wanting to get something back, you need to pause and ask, are there some instances when I can give without actually expecting anything back? And you find that some of the most enriched and some of the most fulfilled people on earth are not the wealthiest people, but they are the people that have given without expecting to receive.
Hmm.
And that's not to say live your entire life as a giver that doesn't receive anything, because how are you going to pay your bills? Of course not. It's to say that find one aspect of life that you can say, I am giving without actually expecting to receive back. And you find that that builds you, fulfills you, that enriches you in a way that is very difficult to replicate. How early should we start? I think we should start early. The reason is because when children imbibe the spirit of volunteering, when the stakes are low, they don't have bills to pay, they don't have school fees to think of, they don't have to buy gas or petrol in their car. When the stakes are low, they've already committed to a life of service. They are
Hmm.
already trained to be givers, right? And as
Yeah.
they grow older, they can now choose the sphere that they want to be volunteers in, or how they
Hmm.
want to give of their time or of their talent. Um, I thought our dad punished us quite a bit when we were young, but I didn't realize it wasn't punishment, it was training.
Hmm.
For example, I I think every Saturday for at least 2.5 or 3 years, I would be in the market negotiating, buying flour, eggs, sugar, because Saturday evening I had to start baking. And Sunday evening, Sunday afternoon, I had to sell everything that I had baked, because I managed the confectionery stand, in the church. It was the worst punishment. My friends were going out for parties, they were hanging out, they were going to the beach on Saturdays. I was baking. And on Sunday, I was the sales girl. Psst, hey, sis, how much? How much is humbling? Very, very humbling exercise. And the worst part of it, I wasn't allowed to earn a dime.
Time.
Everything had to be properly accounted for and given back to the church.
Hmm.
It was such a punishment. I thought. But I didn't know that he was preparing me. When I sit on a board today, I'm bringing those principles into the picture. I'm not asking you, I'm not necessarily saying to you, how much am I going to get for volunteering? I'm understanding that there's a bigger mission, there's a bigger agenda. There is the need for me to look beyond what I get for myself and ask myself, what am I giving to society?
Hmm.
So I think that the earlier we can imbibe, these virtues, I think the better society will actually be. And then again, as I said, as young people grow older, they can
Yeah.
decide, what do I want to do and earn an income from? What do I want to do and receive residual income from? What do I want to do and receive? If I get nothing back, that's fine.
Hmm.
And it's
I
important
love
that
that.
everyone can think about their life in these categories.
I really like that. Thank you so much for sharing that. And now that I hear your story, like I don't feel so bad anymore about all the things my dad made me do when I was when I was younger. Because it was, I mean, when I mistakenly took food and nutrition as a course, he used to make me cater because he had this condition where he couldn't just like eat anything and everything, like IBS. So he would make me cater, like I'll make the chapman, I'll make the fried rice, I'll make the salad, everything. Like I will cater for the event at no cost. but I mean, but I mean, it was now that I know that you had to do some of that stuff too. And I really, really like something you mentioned, and I want to directly tie this into personal branding because what I see is, so for example, when I see people who come and tell me that, oh, Dara, I want you to work on our brand, either as an organization or as a human, like personal branding, I find that the majority of the issues that these people usually have goes back to their basic principles and values. You see what I mean? Because a lot of times people run to, oh, I just want to look this way on LinkedIn, or I want to become an author, I want to write this way. But in the end, all those things are execution. It's like you've created a radio ad, then you're placing it on radio. It's execution. The most important thing is who you really are behind the scenes, what your values are, and values are not things that change today and today you're this, tomorrow you're that. And I find that you see these grounding principles that you've spoken about now, it's very unfortunate, is missing a lot in society. And then people want to create them from social media profiles. And I find that sometimes when I even send an interrogation form to people, they run away. Because by the time they fill out all the details of those things, they're like, no, busted. This girl has gotten me, that kind of thing. So I find that they run a lot. One of them said that when she checked the onboarding form, she was like, wow, she really had to go and think about her life. I was like, yeah. I'm like, because we can't build on a foundation, not even a shaky foundation, but a foundation that doesn't exist. You have to be clear on these values. And as much as people claim to be woke and claim to be different, I personally am such a great advocate of the values and the principles that our parents held. Because even if people there's an argument of maybe they were a little too traditional, there's that argument. But I still find that for a lot of them, but right from my parents, friends, and things like that, I always saw these grounding principles that just didn't shake. Like there's some things they would never do, even if you offer them $1 billion. I remember getting into an organization, Dr. Mo, let me quickly share this story. And I remember that, the CEO of the organization used to say that when we finish any project, we'll have to do a retirement. And I had colleagues who would grumble and grumble, but I didn't even care. It was so easy for me. And they were like, why is it so easy? I'm like, because even when I went to university, if my father should give me 50 naira, 50 naira, he will ask for the receipt of the book. He will ask for where I bought it. Like I had my own account. So in fact, when they told me to do it at work, they just put a name to it. I just knew that it was called retirement. But ordinarily, something everybody would do at home, down to my mother, down to my friends, down to my cousins, whoever. He gives you money for anything, you must account for it. And he had the statement, which I can't remember now, about, maybe non-accountability being equal to fraud or something like that. It's like, even if you buy something for 100 naira, even if you buy from the malam, you're better, the malam had better sign the receipt. So, I really like that you mentioned all these things around the values and principles, because I think that when we even leave all the fluff, this is what it boils down to. This is what it really boils down to. And, I want this to immediately lead us into, a bit of a challenge that I think that sometimes we face as Africans. And I want to know, through the research you've done, the assessments you've done, the projects you've worked on, I know you've done so much in this sector. Do you think that there's a challenge with authenticity for Africans? What do you feel like being ourselves really, what does it really look like? And do you think that there's any role of authenticity in contributing to like our development as a continent?
Another great question, and this is where I have to give big props, to another very dear sister, Chizoba Imoka.
Yes.
We've just supported her quite a few organizations have supported, and she has pulled off the Rerouting in African History conference last week. She is passionate, deeply passionate about an African-centered approach to education. And I understand. Everything starts from identity. What you eventually become, how you think about yourself, how true you are to yourself. Because some people, live lives that are not authentic, and they know that they're living lives that are not authentic. And it's an inner struggle, for them. It all begins from identity. Who are you really? And being grounded in that knowledge and understanding of who you are becomes very important in understanding where you need to be and whom you need to be with, where you need to go. And this is not just at the personal level, also at the level of the country.
Hmm.
And that's why I am so convinced that the work that she's doing is incredibly important, helping teachers to understand how to infuse an African centered approach into curriculum.
Hmm.
Our colonial heritage um, has had the downside of making us forget a lot of who we are,
Yeah.
the strengths that lie within, the intentionality, the beauty.
Hmm.
There's a video making the rounds of
What did you
the
over?
Yoba festival.
Love it, love it.
I'm from Ijebu land myself, so
Oh,
I
really?
know
I
it's a
didn't know that.
festival that's held, every year.
Yeah,
And we don't really think too much about it. I mean, everybody shows up, in their,
yeah.
attire, ashoke, and etu and everything. And it's colorful and it's beautiful. But now looking at it through the eyes of others,
I know, right?
looking at that glamour en masse
Hmm.
from the eyes of other people who are wondering, who am I? What should I wear? What language should
Hmm.
I speak? What language should I speak at home? What food should I eat? What did my ancestors do? What does that
Hmm.
tell me about my future? We're so privileged. We're so privileged to know where we come from. We're so privileged to be deeply connected with our history.
Hmm.
And that should be an asset. That should be a launch pad,
Yeah,
even for our education system, so that we are true to who we really are as people. And that's not to say, oh, we'll never speak English again. That's not the point. The point is to say that what is it about ourselves that makes us so deeply authentic that we can draw on because it's a natural capability, it's a natural strength, right?
yeah.
So it's important. And, I don't want to sound too controversial, but I can speak from my own personal experience. I can't speak for anybody else's.
Hmm.
I didn't understand the concept of racism until I left Nigeria.
Hmm.
I didn't even know what it was. I thought it was an information gap. I thought maybe they didn't know that people in certain parts of Africa don't actually live on trees. Maybe they just don't know that people like fly in planes and they live in the skyscrapers and they even spend US dollars. Maybe they just don't know. But it's not an information gap for a lot of people. It is
Yeah,
just we don't like the color of your skin.
yeah,
It's really just we don't like the color of your skin. And we
yeah,
have prejudices. I didn't understand that
yeah,
because I've never experienced it. Who was going to be racist to me? I grew up in a society that was almost all black,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
And this is a learning that we can share. This is a rootedness that we can share with other people,
hmm.
even people that find themselves living in multicultural societies, but
Yeah,
finding themselves as minority races or minority ethnic groups. How to build confidence, but it starts from knowing who you are and where you come from. So I'm a huge fan of just being authentic
yeah,
in language, how you dress, how you do your hair, how you speak. Be true
yeah.
to who you are, but being true to who you are starts from knowing who you are.
Hmm.
And that is a
I love
quest
that.
that we must always prioritize as
Hmm.
individuals, as societies, as countries. Who are we?
Hmm.
And that will help us answer what we are becoming, what we need to become. It starts from who we are.
Hmm.
That's my response.
Thank you so much for that, Dr. Mo. That was so beautiful and so powerful. There's too much to say on that topic. Just too much. That's the way I will put it, because I mean it's a pain point, and it's because just to see the beauty and the richness of the African culture. Just like you said, when I saw the Ojude Oba video, I was so like I was in awe. And I remember I texted one of my aunts immediately, and I'm like, because I had called her that day and she was there. I know normally I was just like, because she goes every year, and I was like, she's there again. And then when the video went out, I was like, Auntie, please send me all your pictures now. I want to see them. She was like, but man, every year. She said the only difference is, this year, she noticed that there were a lot more young people, that she was so happy to see that more young people had actually signed up to be part of those groups, because they're like groups and they pick the best dress. And she was like, okay, you're coming next year. And I'm like, but it's the day after it. She said, don't worry, you're coming. She'll buy this thing, I have to come and see it. And for me, it's also the great importance, because you see this thing, and I love the work Chizoba is doing. I saw it, I saw when you publicized it, and I just saw that this is really great work, because it's the journey to, like, say, restoration or recovery is multifaceted. So there's the work of the storytellers, who is like the Nii guy who did the Ojudi Oba video. They have their work, the people in branding, the people in communications, people in education, the people in policy, the people in government. Like, everybody has a role to play in this, because a lot of times when I then see those stories, like, put together in a different way and then showcased on in some studio, not to mention them, I'm like, this is our story and this is not even the way it should be told. So we all have a role to play, in terms of really telling our stories. And I really love, all you said about authenticity, because sometimes, like, I remember whenever, if I go for conferences, I sometimes see the people who come in from India who have their complete, I was at one gathering and the lady came in with the complete, and I'm like, okay, is this a wedding? Like, and she with the complete thing. I see people from, Singapore, Malaysia. You find people who, are very proud of who they are. And it's also something I like about you, by the way. It's one of the reasons why I keep telling you I'm coming for your wardrobe. Because, after, I think it was like 4 years ago, and I was like, yes, I've always liked this thing, but, I've never had the confidence to pull it off. And when I saw you doing that, I was like, okay, yes, it's time, it's time, it's time. And I was like, whenever I want to make something, just make sure Ashoke is there, or make sure it is to show. So really, but even beyond that, you're so right, because if people are not authentic, it's so hard for you to connect to anything. Today you're this, tomorrow you're that, and you die not knowing who you are. You're just moving in every direction, not knowing where you should be, what your focal point is. So thank you for explaining that so nicely. Now I wanted us to talk about something that I know that pretty much shapes a lot of the work that you've done over the years, and I think that I would really like if you can break this thing, if you could break this to us down, at very different levels. And really, it's the role of the private sector, really talking about these public-private partnerships in the development of education in Africa as a whole. I know that you're very convinced that, this is a critical element to making sure that we get the kind of outcomes that we're looking at. And you've done so much work in this sector. But I want to know that, at every single level, be it individual, be it an organizational level, what kind of work should we be doing? What kind of partnerships should we be looking to forge? What should be our contribution at these different levels, to employability, to education in Africa as a whole?
Um, so I think that a lot of it, a lot of the posturing when it comes to the private sector, you know, begins from an ideological framing of the role of the private sector in education. So when you go into the United Nations Convention on Human Rights, it states there that education is both a public and a private concern. So governments, for example, have the right and the responsibility to use education to produce societies that are peaceful and are just, and to build, citizenship, etc. But it also talks about parents having an a priori right to determine the kind of education that they want their children to have. So if I want my child, to have a very heavily religious type of education, which ticks the boxes when it comes to the national curriculum, but is also heavily religious, that's my prerogative. If I want my child to, whilst he's getting an informal education, to become an amazing soccer player, it's my prerogative. And that's our right. So it's therefore is the right of societies to, and parents, caregivers, to choose the type of educational opportunities that their children are going to receive. And if you're going to choose, there has to be something to choose from, right? So there has to be provision, different types of provision. Now, it is the responsibility of government to ensure that every child receives a basic education. It is the responsibility of government. But there are also many discussions in the literature around the difference between guaranteeing the right of every child to education and actively being the provider and manager of that educational institution or those educational institutions. So, different countries around the world have experimented with charter school type arrangements where the government provides education, provides the school buildings, owns the schools, but has the private sector manage the
Yeah.
schools. Different types of results across different sectors. But I think that those that advocate for it advocate on the basis of choice because it is your right to be able to choose the kind of education that your child receives in compliance with the law of the land, of course. Now, there are also additional responsibilities and rights as well that are conferred on the private sector. The responsibility to support and fund education, but also the right to do so. And for us at TEP Center, being able to coalesce the public and the private sectors. And when I say private sector, I'm talking of corporate
Yeah.
organizations, civil society organizations, organizations that are not government. It is our enduring passion to coalesce them and to help them to understand the strengths that each brings to the table and how to build, unify, and harmonize those strengths and build on those strengths. So, for example, we all know that there is no machinery like government machinery. I have seen firsthand how a directive would be issued on a Monday, and by close of business on Tuesday, every single public school teacher in the country has received that memo. There is no machinery like that, right?
Yeah.
It's the way the effectiveness of that machinery is unparalleled. The ability to, have 50 policymakers sit in a room, make a decision that cascades and affects the lives of 5, 10, 15 million children is unparalleled and cannot be matched by any other sector. So the public sector is critical and, of course, is the provider of last resort, is the one that guarantees that regardless of whether your parents even know what to choose, have the means to choose, you will receive an education. That is the role of the government. To regulate the sector and to make sure that the laws and the policies that have been developed are implemented by all the stakeholders that are supposed to implement, and to ensure that the sector is governed properly. And so the private sector also has responsibilities. We have responsibilities to keep governments accountable. It is our responsibility and it is also our right to make sure that as taxpayers' money is going to the public sector and being churned out back into social services such as education, that it's done efficiently, accountably, and transparently. We have that responsibility, which again is a right. The private sector, as corporations, also have the right to contribute to education. They have the right to fund schools, build schools, offer scholarships. It's a responsibility, but it's also a right. So, because we all have rights and responsibilities, it's important for us to come together and say, you know what? This is the best use of my own rights in this area. This is the most productive use of my right. What's the most productive use of yours? Corporate organizations have reputations for effectiveness and efficiency, right? Government is a mammoth institution that can reach many people very quickly. How do we bring those skills together? How do we bring those competencies and those capabilities together, centering the child at the middle? How do we make sure that our shared objective is that that child in the middle receives the quality of education that enables her or him to live a productive life in the future? So that's why, for us, the private sector is important, as is the government. It's a shared responsibility, but it's also a shared right. Mother.
Okay. I felt that. I felt that it's yeah. Yeah. Just thinking that through, and Also putting the child at the center and just thinking of what the current situation is, it's a little sad. Oh well, yeah. Thank you for educating me first and everybody else on that, Dr. Mo. And this leads me. We will soon wrap up. I don't want to take too much of your time, but this also leads me to looking at our current situation now. I see that there's some people, amazing souls who want to contribute to education, but are not really sure how. Who may be individuals, who may even be managers in their organizations that have nothing to do with, education in the, in the general, from a general point of view. So I wanted to ask what you thought the what you like to get an insight into. I'm so caught up in what you just said that my head is everywhere. I wanted to get an insight into how you think these people can contribute, especially from the perspective of education innovation. And why I say this is I, for one, before I, started volunteering for organizations like Slum to School, and then even Faith Foundation, because even though Faith Foundation is entrepreneurship, really there's so much teaching that has to be done for entrepreneurs who, just started businesses out of need. And there's so much you need to teach them in HR, in marketing, in legal, finance, so much. But I also realized that before I got into volunteering, I had this fear because I am usually careful of, not trying to solve a problem and becoming part of the problem. If you don't have, what is, and that's why you see that sometimes you have just so many organizations, and when you go and look into the work you're doing, you're like, maybe you should have left them, and stuff like that. So, and I feel like, your experience with education innovation can give us a clear insight or path into how we can really contribute to education in our various societies. So can you just speak a little about that, please?
Yeah, Omoja, I think you've touched on some of the most important areas. Opening up yourself to volunteering.
Yes.
You've talked about the slum to school, for example. I've talked about junior achievement.
Yeah.
You've talked about Faith Foundation. There's so many organizations that are actively looking for volunteers, to support their work. Some other people are a bit more skeptical. They want to see the data first. I would point you in the direction of many different data sources, including ours. If you go on the TEP website,
Yes.
www.tepcenter.com, center with an RE.
Okay.
There's data sets. In fact, if you're a number cruncher, there are data sets there that you can download and do your analysis, on. And there are other websites, whether it's National Population Commission, if you're looking for demographic data, National Bureau of Statistics. There's so many websites. The UNICEF Multiple Indicator Cluster Survey was published not very long ago, I think about a year ago, thereabout. Very interesting information, about education outcomes, in the country. But some people really want to get into the data. They want to know where the real problems lie.
Yeah.
So that they can maximize their impact, in those areas. And I have nothing but respect, for those people and those organizations. I think that there's also something to be said, for starting from where you are and asking yourself, what problem am I interested in solving? And that helps you to gravitate, towards the sector that you should focus on. One of the things that we also do at TEP is to curate a community. We help to curate a community of education CSR managers, because very often CSR managers are trying to, that's corporate social responsibility managers,
Yes.
of corporate organizations, are trying to make decisions on what to do with their CSR budget. But everybody wants to make an impact, but nobody has enough money to make an impact. So we're constantly looking for what's the best use of my money. Where is the best location to invest these corporate funds? And so that community, I find, is growing and is developing.
Yeah.
And we're becoming even more intentional about providing information, data, supporting, using evidence, getting them to really understand the deep issues. A typical example is lots of people want to give computers to schools, right? They want them to move into the 21st century.
I know that problem.
We have this grand, handing over ceremony. We take 50 computers, we go to the school, cut the ribbon, have drinks, and then, all is well. We go. You go back to the school in 1 year, the computers are covered up in a room. They're in a room, they're covered up, and then you ask the principal, why? Oh, One, I don't want the children to spoil them.
Ah,
I don't want the children to spoil them.
heard that so
Then
many
secondly,
times.
we don't have electricity, we don't have power, so
Yeah,
we can't switch them on and maintain them. And then if we have power, we don't have money for running costs of diesel or petrol,
yeah,
to run the generator that would power them. So let's just leave them so that nothing happens to them. But somebody in their CSR budget has ticked that box, in their reporting, their CSR reporting, that,
yeah,
oh, we are building ICT
yeah. I
skills
see
for the 21st century, and they're slapping themselves on the back, so that's just one example of how, and it's a funny example, but it happens a lot. It
this.
happens a lot.
Yeah,
Same thing with libraries, with books, same thing with the provision of different types of services,
yeah.
teacher training. Oh, we've trained all the teachers. What have you
Train
trained
them.
them in? Are they using the
Ah,
training? So we just help, private organizations to better nuance their own understanding of
yeah,
what needs to, in the education sector. So for us, the private sector is very important,
yeah.
an extremely important contributor. And that ideology is steeped on our understanding of human rights according to the United Nations Convention.
Yeah, thank you for that, Dr. Moan. I really do encourage everybody, that's watching this now or is going to watch it later, to please go to TEP Center, especially if it's that you want to contribute specifically in education. I've had so many of these instances or so many of these projects, just like Dr. Mo has said. Honestly, people trying to contribute, and I do feel like they start out with good intentions, but there's always a problem of trying to show the results immediately, trying to get the numbers, and everything just goes down the drain. So please be guided in these decisions. And actually, I know you want to create impact, so create impacts that's actually impactful. I'll put it that way. So please go to TEP Center, and even if it's that you just want to visit their website, check out their reports, if you want to join one of their communities, so that if you want to solve a problem, you're doing it you're making an informed decision, and not just a nice to look in the newspaper or on blogs type of decision. So Dr. Mo, now we will go to our last and final question for the day, even though I'm so reluctant to let you go, but we have to because I know you're so busy. Let's talk about personal branding now. Do you consider it necessary? And in your opinion, how do you think it should be done in a way that's valuable?
I think that the journey of life is an evolution. It's an evolutionary process. It's a journey of discovery.
Mm,
I think that the responsibility of every individual is to know who you are, and to understand why
mm,
you're here. Because there's a reason why you're here. Many people do not have the privilege of living. A lot of people died when they were young. Lots of
mm,
people didn't even have the privilege of being born.
mm,
So your presence here, on earth is for a reason. And it's a reason that you are uniquely designed to address. It's a problem or a challenge that has your name all over it.
mm,
So I think that, first of all, it is our responsibility to understand that we're on a journey of discovery, understanding who we are as people, understanding where we gravitate towards.
mm,
Somebody once said that the thing that elicits the deepest emotions in you, the thing that makes you most angry, the thing that makes you saddest, is a clue to the problem that you're meant to solve.
mm,
Right? So that heightened sense of awareness around why we're here, what we're doing, what we're supposed to be solving for. If we were
mm,
equations, what are we solving for?
mm,
Right? I think is important. And I think that, as you have alluded to earlier on, building your brand then starts from that point of recognition,
mm, mm,
that point of, okay, so this is who I am and this is what I'd like to do, this is what I'd like to solve for. You can then begin to come to people like Omodara to say, Omodara, can you help me? I want to say this, but I don't know how to say it.
mm.
I want to position in a particular type of way, but I don't know how to do it. Or am I doing it the right way? This is what I really want to say, but this is what my public persona is saying. Are we in alignment? Can you give me an objective view? I think that who we are permeates the entirety of our being, from how we look to what we do to whom we work with. But there's an intentionality around that can be learned.
Mm.
It can be taught and it can be learned. I remember learning about my hair for the first time. A lot of people with 4C, sorry, 4Z
Mm,
here, have this love hate
mm.
relationship, with hair. And for a long time, I thought this hair was just a problem. Like, what is this? This not, no, you can't do anything with this hair, you know. And I remember the journey of discovery that I went on, experimenting with different products that my grandparents had used,
Mm.
but which my parents' generation had forgotten about and therefore hadn't shared with us. Discovering those products, discovering ways to manipulate the hair so that the hair became beautiful.
Mm.
It became a pride, not a source of disgrace or shame
Mm.
or sorrow.
Mm.
So that kind of discovery, think about it from your skills perspective, from your talent perspective, from your corporate persona perspective, from your academic persona perspective, if you're thus inclined. I believe that the brand should simply be an attestation of what is on the inside of the person.
Mm.
And I think one of the best brands in the world, when I think about corporate brands now, is a product that a lot of people may not remember. It's called Marmite. It's this thing that, you slap on like bread or cookies and you'd eat. It was kind of like a jam.
Really?
But the problem with Marmite was, yes, we used to eat Marmite when we were very, very young.
Mm.
And the problem with Marmite was you either loved it or you hated it. Like, no in between. Was absolutely no in between. So my dad and my mom loved Marmite. The children, oh, we hated Marmite. And for me, that's a great brand.
Mm.
It's what it is.
Yeah.
Take it, leave it. It is what it is. They didn't try to sweeten Marmite, create a brand diffusion, or a brand extension, or add some more sugar, to it, or
Yeah.
put some more salt in. It was what it was. At least I think so. I don't know
I
if I'm.
actually googled it. I just saw it. Marmite.
And living that authentically is empowering. It's empowering for you and it's empowering for other people. And that's not to say that, we live a life that constantly wants people to be in opposition to us. No.
Mm.
But it's to say that if people are going to oppose you for who you authentically are, then should they really be in your circle?
Mm. Mm.
Should you really be worrying and staying up at night about those people? Marmite didn't. Marmite didn't.
I have to go and look for this Marmite, please. I just hope
I
I'm
don't
going to be
know
one
if
of
it's
those
still
people who.
produced. I don't know. I haven't seen it in many, many
In
years. I
many
don't know
years,
if it's
I
still
googled
produced.
it. I googled it. I have to check it out. And Dr. Mo, honestly, I feel like as you were saying that, I was like, do you just want to come and take this course instead of me? I'm like, you spoke about the personal brand. I feel like you sold it more than I ever would. And thank you so much for that because I agree with you about it, being who you authentically are. You can't, there's a limit to how much you can keep up being who you're not. One day to be tiring, one day somebody will call you out because it's just not who you really are. So the idea, just like you said, it really is a product of it's just a projection of what's inside. It's as simple as that, who you are. And I really love how you linked it to, like your skills, your expertise, whatever the case may be, and shaping that and projecting it in a light that people in a light that's believable, is really what personal branding is about. Thank you so much for that. That was so deep. Like I'm just saying in my head, I'm already telling my team in my head that you all have to cut that part out. We have to use it for promotion. Anyway, but really, so thank you so much, Dr. Mo. And for everybody, I really liked this discussion because it went into every direction. From I even feel like there was parenting in the education, public and private partnerships, understanding your value sets, understanding your value system, understanding, volunteering, how we can contribute to society, the role of the government. It was so beautiful and it was so rich. And thank you so much for everything that you said today. So everybody, we have launched a personal branding course. So I have launched a personal branding course that really, it's called Beyond Your Title. It's called Beyond Your Title, and it's personal branding for impact. So the idea is to really get people to look beyond, first of all, me, and see how, as through building our brands, we can also lift other people up, and also, ensuring that the brand that we project is authentic, it's something that we can sustain, it's relevant, and most importantly, it's not something that we have to fake to maintain. Because if you have to fake it to make it or maintain it, then it's not your personal brand. So really, through this course, which is a 4-week course, we'll be showing people how to build that brand authentically, and we will start through a review of what your value system is, the kind of values that you have and you can get behind, also what your skill set is, also privacy. Unfortunately, I couldn't discuss that with Dr. Mo, because I also believe that as individuals, we require privacy and control, just like we have it for our websites and things like that. We have to respect the privacy of our families, of our loved ones. Yes, we're trying to build a personal brand, but that doesn't equate it doesn't equate to people knowing what is happening in our houses, right? And even though some people may live their lives that way, it's not the only way to personal branding. And that's why we want to show you a different way, to do this. So you will help you develop a personal brand manual, show you how you can project your skills, your values, your expertise, show you how you can help other people through your brand, the kind of platforms you want to be on. I also have to mention it now that a new platform has launched, but no pressure to be on it. Nobody says because there's a new platform, your personal brand must read, you must immediately jump on it. No, it's not about trend setting or jumping on trends. It's about value, and it's about the legacy that you're trying to leave behind. So basically, the cost of the course is 100,000 naira. It runs for 4 weeks. We have an early bird discount now, so it's going for 85,000 naira. And we'll put it in the comments section, the link to the course, so that you can just check it out. We start in the last week of July, and you can check out what it's about. But really, the idea really is about that authenticity. I personally cannot remember dancing on any platform to get a job or to contribute to society or to do something of impact. I have no memory of doing any of those things. And the course isn't about me, it's just trying to show you that we can live authentically and true to who we are, without any pressure whatsoever, from other people. So I encourage you all to sign up for it, take advantage of the early bird discount. And, for everybody who didn't join from the beginning, please go back and watch this video. I see one of my daddies here, Mr. Obileye. Thank you for joining, sir. So good to see you. Thank you for joining. So basically, Dr. Mo, thank you so much for honoring me with your presence and all of us. We've learned so much from this conversation. Even I, like, my direction in terms of, okay, the situation with our educational system, and even so much more. Thank you so much for your amazing, amazing contribution this evening. It's really, really well appreciated. Thank you.
So it's such a joy. And if I may just do a shameless plug in your own direction, Amadara is the most incredible personal branding expert that I have come across. And it's not just about personal branding, it's also about organizational branding. And I'm not saying this to toot your horn unnecessarily. It's not even a compliment. It's just a statement of fact. That's what it is. And I'm just very honored, to have sat under your tutelage as well when it comes to these very important issues. So thank you so much for all that you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Mo. Thank you so much. That means a lot to me. And I see people, putting their comments. I don't know if you can see their comments in there. So thank you, Ma. You were amazing. Yes, she was. She was really amazing. I feel like, this conversation, I feel like even I am going to sit down and go and think about my life for a bit. But it was just so deep, and it was so authentic, and it was so original and so valuable. And that's what I really love about you, in who you are, in the work that you do. I just really, yes, thank you, doctor. They're all saying thank you. Yes, please tell her thank you.
Oh.
She did amazing. And it runs through your entire family. So honestly, a lot of credit goes to your parents as well, because amazing. Every one of you are doing such amazing work. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much. And I encourage everybody to catch up on the replay, and have a good evening, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Dr.
Hotara.